Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, this celebration of 10 years together, 10 years in so many different studios under so many different guises, but we all had the main thing at the heart of it all, which was, of course, football. We've had some fantastic, very special guests in sharing their memories of the beautiful game. It's difficult to try and pick one over the 10 years, but hopefully you'll enjoy our selection, and here's to the next 10 years. We're going to start with Gordon Strachan. This is him talking about swapping his shirt in 1982 with a certain Brazilian who possibly for me wasn't the best Brazilian I've ever seen play football.
He was just so solid.
Yeah.
And the other ones, the midfield players of Falcao, Socrates, and who was the other one? They were all 6'3".
Yeah.
And you're going, oh.
The only bad player on that side I thought was Serginho.
And guess who swapped the strips with him? And the big fella's coming at me and says, "Can you swap?" Oh, no, anybody but you, big guy. Seriously. And everybody's at the end of the game, who you go? Because four people man marked Zico for the last couple of minutes. And Falcao, Cerezo, and all these kind of guys. And I've got the big fella strapping off. Jesus Christ. But he's probably saying the same. I've got the wee guys there.
So that's Gordon Strachan as a player. Gordon Strachan actually went on to become Scotland manager, and he was going through a difficult period and people were calling for his head. Even Roughie decided that enough was enough.
You want to get down there with a bit of hope and believe that you can get something.
So he stays if there's a point?
Unless it's 3-0. Still on it.
Ahead of defeat.
It's that kind of punditry really you don't get on any other programme, so let's cut to the chase with the man now. Should Gordon Strachan be sacked, Roughie?
Well, can you give me just 5 or 10 seconds just to explain myself? I'm going to turn myself into Judge Rough.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be a judge here, and as judges do, I'm going to call Gordon Strachan in front of me and I say, Gordon, yesterday I said that if we were beaten 3-0, you would have to stand down. But since I've said that, as good judges do, I'm going to take things into consideration. I think for your service to the game as a player, for your, I have to say, in the last 2 or 3 years, you've made us a better team. Yeah. I don't agree with the results that we're getting. You're one of my pals. So I'm going to defer. I'm going to defer sentence for another game. I think you deserve that. I think you do.
I did mention to you that we've had various studios where Peter and Roughie, the football show, was filmed. Some of them were put together with professionals. Some of it was very much like the Blue Peter, sticky back plastic and fairy liquid bottles, as you're about to find out. Been a good week for Hearts, a win against Rangers in midweek, and of course a good win for them at Fir Park today against Motherwell. All is rosy in the Tynecastle Garden, and Ian Cathro can enjoy his night tonight. As for Mark Warburton, it's going to be a difficult weekend as the whole stadium collapses here along with Rangers in their match. Thanks for watching. Good night. Tam Cowan joined the show more than a few years ago, and he's been a great laugh sharing memories of his beloved Motherwell. Did he mention that they'd reached the cup final in 1991? Even when there was big players available for transfer, somehow Tam managed to get it that they were linked with Motherwell. An undisclosed club have actually bid 85 million as a signing on fee for Messi. I can only presume that Manchester City are hovering about him.
Well, if you see the subscriptions that are coming into the Well Society just now, Peter, it's really motoring. A lot of punters are putting in their £10 a month and it all adds up. So that's all I'm willing to say about it at this point.
Can I just say, I'd love to see, and now, don't complain to me, but I'd love to see Messi walking down the Motherwell shopping centre, Roughie. You know, he might buy a donut, but once he looks around, I think he might actually have to think twice, Roughie.
I think you maybe get one of his boots for the money that you've collected.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course,
is that what they're talking? 85 million.
85 million signing on fee. Listen, couldn't lace Willie Pettigrew's boots. I can hear Tam on that. When Rangers against Celtic comes up on the football calendar, it's always a special game and it dominates our programme, and it's always good to get someone who's actually played in it to give you an insight into what it's like in the build-up, the game and the aftermath. Here's Celtic midfielder Paul Lambert.
As you play with your head, You've got to play with your head. You play the game, know the occasion. I always felt that going into them, and if you do that, I think everything falls into place. If you go and try and, you want to say, cement somebody, the old-fashioned Scottish word, cement somebody, or leave your mark on them, it can go against you in certain ways. But if you play with your head and you play with a calmness, you come through it. And I think if you go around kicking people, or you want to, so the crowd will be up for it anyway. The crowd will not need somebody to make a tackle to get up for it, because the crowd will bounce off each other.
You know, you're too sensible ahead of an Old Firm game, I have to tell you. I ran into one of your ex-teammates the other day there, and Alan Thompson says the players need to keep a lid on it and not see the red mist, well, which I know is going to bring a smile to your face.
No, it's funny, you just remember me. I remember myself and Stefan Kloss had a fight in the penalty area at the Celtic end at Ibrox, and he was one of my best mates. And I forget it, we actually got a penalty, and Stefan held the ball, and I was trying to grab it from him, but the way it happened, the two of us fell on the ground, and it became pretty, so that last statement I gave you there, just ignore it. But I think that the emotion takes it, and you do get caught up in it, listen, and you try, and as I said before, the best way to play it is play with your head, but you do get caught up in certain aspects of it. And I remember Stefan called me after the game, he said, what are you, some sort of madman? I said, well, it's the nature of the game.
I did mention to you we've had so many special guests, and the best guest ever for me has to be Pelé. For me, the greatest footballer of all time. He is the GOAT, and I know a number of people will argue their favourite player, but for me, the Brazilian was absolutely sensational, and to get that one-to-one with him on the stage will never be forgotten. This is him talking about that night when he scored his 1000th goal wearing the shirt of Santos.
When I was watching the movie, when I was looking at the old footage, you scored your 1000th goal against Vasco da Gama. You scored the goal, the crowd come onto the pitch, and everybody celebrates. The game is stopped. Had you scored that 1000th goal here in Scotland, there would have been a police investigation. The game would have been stopped, and people would have been arrested, Pelé.
You make a joke about that, but it was serious. It was different for me because, you know, I will be the 1000 goal, the world record, and then everybody think, oh, it was easy, you know, because it was a penalty kick. It was easy to score a goal, but it was the most difficult goal I scored because it was, you know, 1 or 2 games before, Santos play and Brazil play, the goal didn't come. Then we went to Maracanã, it was, you know, full up Maracanã. There was a penalty kick. Normally, the player who used to kick a penalty kick was Rivellino or Carlos Alberto. They used to kick the penalty. And that day, because of the 1000 goal, they say, Pelé, go there and kick. Oh, I shake my head. For the first time, I was a professional. Then I say, I put the ball, I look, oh my God, I cannot miss this penalty. I cannot miss because you know, it was very pressure and everybody started to shout. And then another thing, I don't know if you see the film, the tape, you're gonna see. I arranged, I put the ball on the mark. Then when I look, my team was in midfield. I say, if the ball bounces, and the goalkeeper bounced the ball, was nobody to get it. Wasn't nobody, all the team was there. I say, my God, if I miss it. Was the most important goal in my life was a penalty kick. I make a bicycle kick, I make a head kick, but this one, everybody thinking, it was easy because it was a penalty kick. To me, it was the most difficult goals I scored in my life.
Footballers like a good laugh, and some of them like a good song as well. There wasn't, I couldn't think of a better way, actually, to finish one of the shows with Brian Prunty, a man of many clubs, but of course, not only that, a good laugh as well when he came into the studio, and he told us a great story about being in the dressing room, singing along with his teammates, and he decided to give us a rendition of that favourite song of his, The Gambler.
Day of the season, it's possibly the biggest game in a lot of folks' careers, and I include myself in that, in terms of what's at stake. So it's 5-3. I think the manager can sense just a little bit of tension. Guys are a little bit quiet, which is fine, it happens. So I was through getting something from the physio's bag and come back through, and the manager says, look guys, this is it. I'm not going to say anything. This is it, it's now or never. However, there's one thing I'm going to do. Prunce, you have to sing. And I immediately thought, this guy's kidding me on. So I could see the players' eyes looking at me and thinking, what's going on here? So 5-3, I'm belting out The Gambler, Kenny Rogers. The linesman chaps the door, opens the door and sees the place in uproar and immediately slams the door shut and storms out. And we'll never ever know if that contributed to getting us over the line, but it certainly helped, and it was something totally different, and that's a story that I'll never ever forget.
Hopefully you'll join us tomorrow on the programme. Dumbarton boss Steve Aitken will be our boot-room guest. We leave you with Brian Prunty singing Kenny Rogers' The Gambler, just to take us out. The opening lines would be great.
On a warm summer's evening, on a train bound from nowhere, I met up with the gambler. We were both too tired to sleep, so we took turns of staring out the window after darkness. The boredom overtook us. He began to speak.
For many people in the midfield in the 1980s and 90s, Paul McStay was a very special player. I caught up with Paul to get his thoughts on playing for Celtic and, of course, when he was at his peak, how a certain Graham Souness was sniffing to see if he would go and sign for Rangers.
Yeah, you're also a man who, your career over 15 years at Celtic, you managed to go through what they call that Souness era, the change, the evolution of Scottish football and the revolution as well. You know, Graham Souness always says he tried to buy you. Do you remember that?
I think there was noises that something like that was happening. But no, Graham, I mean, I got on very well with Graham, fantastic professional. And it certainly changed things up here with Rangers and Scottish football, yeah.
Yeah. How did you handle the fact that when he obviously tried to buy you, none of your family would let you back in the house?
I'd probably be welcoming that call, but
not going to name a shop after you.
So I think I'm a Celtic man. I was happy to play with Celtic, and again, that's where it was meant to be, Peter, I think.
Peter and Roughie down through the years has actually been on 6 days a week at some points in that decade. We had the Saturday show as well, which allowed myself, Roughie and Gordon Smith to talk about all sports. In this particular debate, we are discussing whether certain sports should be allowed to be considered an Olympic sport. Now, as you can see, Gordon Smith is taking this seriously, Roughie not so.
Basketball.
Yes, team event, yeah.
Basketball, Roughie. When you think of some of the dream teams that have played the United States.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Which means you don't really care. Should I bother? Beach volleyball. No, Roughie, if you say no, I am chucking it.
I would ban the men's beach volleyball. There's no interest in that whatsoever.
You know, I looked at next to the list and I thought, will I read this out because you're here or will I not? Boxing.
Yeah, should be an amateur boxing.
Okay, canoes and kayaks.
Having a laugh.
Cycling.
But Peter, there's the other thing as well. Like, why is it nobody's ever able to answer? I know. I'll let you finish laughing a lot.
There you go.
The big names just keep on coming. We've had lots of guests from not only here in Scotland but down south as well, and we like to catch up with expats, none more so than David Moyes, who at one point was given the job as Manchester United manager. It didn't quite go according to plan, and David shared with us the disappointment in not being able to make a success of the managerial appointment at Old Trafford.
Yeah, I wanted to follow. I think Manchester United do have had a style, Sir Alex's style, and you try not to change too much. But as I said when it happened, there was change would have to take place, and it was going to take time. Sir Alex had been in for 25 years, and it was just going to be time for things to evolve and change. And you know, it wasn't that you couldn't go in. You got to remember, you know, I was really fortunate. I took over the champions, you know, so Manchester United. So it wasn't that you were saying, hey, you're all going. It was just going to be the journey. But as I said, the journey was supposed to be 6 years to start with.
Yeah.
And it's a club which had a history of keeping their managers, supporting them. When things got difficult, they backed them. You know.
Over the course of the 10 years, we actually covered football on a live situation where we had reporters out at the ground offering us an insight into what was happening up to the minute on a Saturday afternoon. We had a great reporter called Laura Brannan, and she covered many games for us. But there was just this one moment when just a slip of the tongue sent the whole team on the Saturday afternoon into convulsions of laughter.
Paul Hartley on the other side, well, he felt it was very much a game of two halves and Dundee were better in the second half. He says that was very much understandable considering Kilmarnock's new manager and the situation they're in just now. But he felt as though that his side just really didn't have a cutting edge in the final third. He did stress the importance, however, of having a clean sheet and how well the defence in general has done recently, and he says a lot of that is down to Darren O'Dea, so a lot of praise for the Irish defender there.
Absolutely, thanks to Laura there. It's good to have Darren O'Dea at the back line, Roughie keeping a clean sheet for Dundee.
If you can, you know,
we're skating a fine line, I have to tell you.
Yeah, if you can come out of most games with a clean sheet, then it's always something you can...
Oh, I don't.
It's always a good sign.
Oh dear. I have to say, you know, there's a moment, Macca, when you look at something and think, did I hear right there? But Celtic won the European Cup in 1967, but along the way to Lisbon, we had Lisbon Lion Jim Craig and Bertie Auld to share their memories of Jock Stein and their fabulous teammates and that never to be forgotten year of 1967. It wasn't all out attack, as Jim Craig reveals.
I think it was after we beat Rangers in the Scottish Cup final in '69. It was a really brutal game, a lot of very tough tackling. The referee had hard work in his hands controlling the kind of temper of the game, and both teams were taken up before the SFA for a talking to after that, and I was quite surprised. I'd forgotten all about that, but I saw a photograph of us coming out of the SFA offices. Anyway, we played Rangers again a few months later, and the boss wasn't in the dressing room before the game, and he suddenly came in and said, "Gentlemen, just a wee second, the chairman would like a word with you." So Sir Robert Kelly, who probably at that time was Sir Robert and not Bob Kelly, came in, and Jock stood beside him and closed the door, and the chairman said that the last time we played this particular team, football had been the loser. A lot of incidents, a lot of tough play, and it's not good for the image of football. And although it's important to win, we must cut out any kind of stuff like that and make sure that the game at the end of the day is the winner. So, are you finished? Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Sir Robert, thank you very much indeed. So he motioned them out the door, and he shut the door behind him, and he leant against the door and said, "Well, you can forget all about that for a start." 50-50, you'll win it automatically. 60-40 against you, you'll have a damn good try at it.
You know, when you talk about team talks and preparation for a game, this is something Jim knows only too well, a famous occasion, which showed you that Stein could create his own myths and legends by dint of personality. Dukla Prague. Dukla Prague was a superb, apparently defensive performance by Celtic. They thumped the Celtic that night, couldn't score, great result, and they got into the European Cup final. After which, Jim will verify this, statements were made like Bob Kelly at the time, we'll never play defensive again, I'm ashamed of that, da-da-da-da. And Steen in the press said, yes, but we had to... Well, in writing my book, I talked to players like Jim, he knows this only too well, Bobby Lennett. Bobby Lennett said, if the big man had told me in the team talk that I had to play defensively, then I must have missed the team talk. He said, if I saw the late lamented Jimmy Johnson about it, the same thing, he says, no, I couldn't get the ball. I had to come back and get it. Stevie Chandler said to me exactly the same thing. Right. It was a brilliant piece of PR by Steen.
Yep.
Jim.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. We weren't supposed to play that way, but in fact there was one classic occasion where I got the ball from Ronnie and I came running forwards and I got to the halfway line and there was two roars from the dugout. One said keep going, the other one said get back, you know. So
on our show over the decade, Gordon Smith has always been at the forefront of Roughie's wind-ups. No matter what Gordon says, if Roughie can keep a straight face and then say something completely and utterly ridiculous, Gordon usually swallows it. And on this occasion, this was absolutely sensational because we were talking about fans that had travelled over from Germany to watch St Mirren, and Roughie decided just to impart some knowledge on Gordon on the Twin Town with Paisley.
I think I saw a tweet there, Gordon, about some German fans that were coming over to the St Mirren game, and you know, with the game called off with 8 minutes to go before kick-off, there's lots of fans who travel from far and wide. I know Rangers and Celtic have fans who come from Ireland on a regular basis, but you know, you're coming over from Germany to watch a game at St Mirren and then you get that.
Yeah, one thing about that is you can't really apologise for that one because you'd have to give them about 36 hours notice. That's different from the people coming from Kirkcaldy who need a bit more than that. But they're coming over from Germany. Are they St Mirren fans or Wraith Rovers?
Wraith Rovers fans. It's a
Wraith Rovers
Twin Town, Ufternblasen.
What was it? Say it again. Say it again.
Listen, can I tell you something? He made that up. He just thought of something that sounded German.
Ufternblasen. That's brilliant.
I'll translate for that.
No, but you know what? He said he almost had you there because he said it was such a straight face that you two were absolutely hooked in. But anyway, they were actually from Germany.
Twin Town of Kirkcaldy. In Germany, whoever that is.
Whatever it is, but it wasn't
it was the
that you mentioned. And I can tell you, Ingolstadt is. We've just been given the word from our producer, who clearly cannot tolerate not knowing. Sorry to everyone, Macca's talking at the moment. Ingolstadt, that's it. And now Macca, what do you make of that Twin Town?
Ufternblasen's just down the road.
Yes, Roughie, you're absolutely right.
Now, the last thing you can do on our show is throw in a double entendre or an innuendo or something that just takes Roughie down a road that he really doesn't want to go. And Mark McGee was talking about Neil Lennon and his situation at Bolton. They were heavily in debt and it was very difficult to actually get any success as a manager. But Mark McGee's description of Neil Lennon's predicament really got Roughie excited.
Paul Sturrock's lost his at Yeovil. Neil Lennon's under a fair bit of pressure now as well, Mark. It's amazing, you know, when suddenly an owner decides that's enough, I've put enough money in, the game's up.
Well, I mean, I'm not really au fait completely with Paul's situation, you know, but Paul's a good manager. Yeah. We all know that. You know, he's proven. And he's lost his job, it happens, you know, and I'm sure, you know, Paul will reconsider things and go on or not. Neil's a totally different kettle of fish. You know, he's at a club where their debt and all of that is catastrophic, and really it's not only handcuffing them, but it's tying, gagging them and handcuffing and tying them to the chair. Yeah. I mean, he's really got a difficult job on there, and it's no surprise they are where they are.
Yeah, maybe not the best way to describe that picture. You're getting Roughie excited there just as we end the programme on that line. Thanks very much to
Footballers are not known for having great haircuts, and none more so than Roughie. When he's in the studio, we get a chance to look back on some of his more mental haircuts down through the years. And of course, occasionally a footballer will come in and be honest about the fact that he's had a hair transplant.
If it's another high-profile player, here's the before and after. What's the driving force behind it, though, Ian? Is it just a bit of self-confidence? Is it vanity? What is it? Or is it, you know, I know a lot of people. I mean, Des McKeown just shaves his head, Roughie. But what's the driving?
I think it is just a personal thing. I don't think it is a vanity thing. Coming from experience, I don't think it is just a self-confidence thing. Obviously, if you are feeling a wee bit self-conscious about it, when you see the results that you can get, and it is kind of more affordable now, and the technique that they're using now is much better. That it's something that's kind of easy accessible and affordable, that people are doing it now. That's just going to give you a wee bit more self-confidence.
Yeah, I have to say it's worked for Lee Griffiths.
Yeah. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, well, absolutely it has, and Chris Boyd as well. I think once Boydie hit the 20 goals, Roughie decided I'll use all that money from the goals bonus, and I actually think you would never think, like Ian, that Chris Boyd, you know, I don't think that.
I think everybody's different with baldness. You know, people think bald. Well, there was a trend when everybody was bald, and a lot of people suit it. A lot of people don't. You know, so why not? If you have an avenue to do something with your hair, why not do it? If you don't like being bald.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know in '78, Roughie, you were contemplating as well. I mean, as you can see here, I mean, were you contemplating taking some from your eyebrows? And moving them elsewhere. Look at you, like the honey monster.
I could have started a hair transplant company myself. I've got about 3 years. 3 years growth there.
Unbelievable. I mean, from you.
Over the 10 years, Frank McAvennie has been a regular guest on the show. This is possibly one of my favourite discussions. We were talking about parents who decided to name their kids after the place they were conceived. Macca just stole the show.
I was amazed, Roughie, when players start to reveal little stories about when they were growing up, or maybe something attached to them. And Louis Moult says that he was named after being born in a toilet. His first name, Lou. I know you're looking at me as if I've made that up. No. I read it in midweek and I thought to myself, surely not. I mean, don't give us that story.
Peter, I actually heard them saying it. I heard the interview.
Yeah.
And he said that. Is that true? Yes, it's true. I heard them saying it.
I never heard them saying it, and my immediate reaction was his second name.
No, he said he got called Lou, and it became Lou because his mum was in the toilet when all of a sudden she had the baby.
They can do some names,
Somebody actually asked him at the time, did you learn to swim at the same time as well?
I mean, that is absolutely outrageous.
Beckham named his after where they were conceived, wasn't it?
Yes, right. Yeah. I mean, footballers. I mean, it's getting ridiculous.
You met my son's car park.
Yeah. Oh, Macca. Right, okay.
Moving on.
Moving on. Let's not dwell on it. Roughie, you couldn't make that one up, could you?
I'm glad he said that one and not the other one.
Oh, dear.
There are occasions on the show when Roughie decides to be very serious, but on this particular occasion, with Joe Miller by my side, he came out with a little phrase to deal with fans who misbehave at grounds, and I just couldn't hold the tears back. It was absolutely mental, and Joe Miller did his very best to try and save me, but Roughie's line had us all in fits of laughter.
I'd like to think that there are other avenues of nailing these people. You know, we've got CCTV, you know, we've got, you know, the police there, the stewards there. I would like to think we'd take another step, you know, and just make sure that these people are caught and punished, because once you catch and punish them, it's the people round about them you hope would learn a lesson to say, look, that's what's happened to him, it's not going to happen to me. So the next step after that is, obviously we spoke about it as well, was supporters actually standing up and saying, look, you're destroying my club, you know, we're just going to finger you and get point you out.
Yeah, absolutely, and tell them you've got to go. Telling you
you've got to go.
Tell them you've got to go out. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's not gonna happen. Let's move on. Joe. Save me, Joe. Hamilton Accies against Celtic. I reckon. I reckon the Accies.
Sometimes Martin and Neil would accuse me of not being nice to him. There's a time and a place, Martin.
I, a couple of weeks ago, was in the company of one of your teammates, John McGovern, and he mentioned, he'd been round the houses with Brian Clough, but when he looked at Nottingham Forest, when he eventually came with Peter Taylor, the names that he was mentioning, just they run off the tongue. Did you sense, even as a player then, it was going to be something special?
Well, yeah, I probably did feel that, because in my early days at Nottingham Forest, he was only 15 or 17 miles down the way at Derby County, he being Brian Clough. They won the championship. Derby County had a really good team. Brian Clough used to resign every single week at Derby, never expecting Mr. Longson, the chairman, to ever accept the resignation. What happened? One day he accepted the resignation, and Clough couldn't believe it. And so he left Derby County. Along came Dave Mackay, who was a fantastic figure. He was my manager for a year at Nottingham Forest, left to go to Derby. And I think Dave Mackay was the only person managing in Europe that could have taken over from Brian Clough and gone and won the championship.
Well, I was going to say to you, when you think about it, John Robertson, Kenny Burns, Archie Gemmell in there as well.
When I say two Scotsmen, I was talking about John Robertson, and I've already mentioned Brian Clough, but I was talking about John Robertson and Dave Mackay.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you guys, 2 European Cups, will it ever happen again?
Well, Peter, so far in this interview, you've been very nice to me, which is not the case when I was manager at Celtic. In fact, you were a belligerent, twisting, well, I shall not find the noun to describe you. So I don't know what's come over you. Are you a changed man? Are you just being nice to me because I thought you did well one day when you were comparing a show that I was at?
Life mellows you.
Well, it certainly has changed you. Not physically, but absolutely fine.
The one thing you can't do on the show is start to say something on a regular basis. Roughie, over a period of time, started to use this catchphrase relentlessly, and Murdo MacLeod and Gordon Smith were all over him.
John Baird, Roughie, time and time again on our programme, just said, I just want to play regularly, and I think this club suits him.
Yeah, it's not. I was going to say that again. See it last week, somebody said, I said, no doubt about that. I count how many times I say it now.
That's 300 now.
That's 300 now. Today. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've had him on the show, and he just loves scoring goals. He's been at a few clubs. There's no doubt about that. Hey, overreacts that. No way.
Well, we did mention that Gordon was a regular feature on the show, and he is a serious guy, but amazingly there was one occasion when he threw in a gag and caught us all by surprise.
It's interesting to both the 4 top teams playing against each other in the same weekend. It very rarely ever happens. I mean, and it's in St Valentine's Day as well. There'll be no love lost there, I don't think.
That's fantastic. There you are. Hold on a second, Charlie. Finally a guy after all these weeks and months I've been waiting on something.
Hello, Marlene, I got you.
That is sensitive. That's in the Christmas tape, Roughie. Are you happy with that one?
I'm more than happy with that.
So there you have it, just a few of the memories of 10 years together. It's been an absolute blast with Roughie by my side. We've had so many pundits who've come on a regular basis, so many special guests, managers, players, past and present, all sharing their memories of the beautiful game. 10 years past, here's to the next 10 years. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of our memories on Peter and Roughie's Football Show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel and you'll get even more unique content. And if you download the PLZ Soccer app, you'll get all the latest breaking football news. Thank you for your support over the last decade, and thanks for watching today.